Today here with us Devid Kannett from Australia. He is conducting research in forestry and agriculture for long time under area forestry research project. Today he is here to explain us the work of a kind of device called divine rod to select best place for planting trees and the best place for agriculture and also for sourcing best source of underground water. Namaste sir. So
Namaste.
you are most welcome here in our television show. How are you sir?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks very much for letting me come along and participate in this program.
How long have you been staying in Nepal this time?
I've been in Nepal almost 3 months this time. Last September I came over just for a couple of months, and as a result of that visit I was invited to come back, and that's why I'm here now. And sorry, I have to start again, I'm afraid. I've been over here now for 3 months, and I've been going around different schools and other educational institutes, colleges, etc., teaching the discoveries that I've made to many young students and foresters and farmers.
So sir, would you tell us what led you to such research?
Yes. I realized many years ago that we all have amazing intuition, and science cannot explain this intuition, but it is obviously used when we do water divining. And it is my conviction that we are all born with an amazing ability to connect to something out there which is able to impart all sorts of information to us. And initially I got this considerable interest in looking for underground water, which is divining. Now, science cannot explain how anybody using a simple piece of wire like this in their hand can actually walk across the ground, and this will move due to their subconscious mind when we pass over water. It is amazing. We can also use it to determine the depth to the water, the quality of the water, and the flow rates of the water. So I thought, if something that our brain is connected to is able to provide this sort of information, maybe there's a chance we can find other information from wherever it may come. I'm happy with the word God, but God is a very controversial subject with many people.
So sir, would you tell us how this device which you call divine rod works?
Yes. How it works, nobody can explain it. But the Americans use a term twitching, and I think this probably gives us a pretty good idea as to how it happens, because when it moves in your hand, you can actually feel a twitch in your hand, causing the rod to either rotate to the right or left. But this is clearly coming from our subconscious mind. And it was only when a video was made of me doing it that I was aware, that I became aware that my hand was actually moving. It's almost as if my conscious mind was blocking out my vision, so I couldn't see it moving. But on the video, it is just so clearly visible. The brain works in the most amazing ways. I don't know how it works. Scientists don't know how it works. I've approached neurosurgeons and people who, with a view to trying to get them to understand it, but they don't want to know. I think the problem is just too difficult. But it works. Now, I found water for thousands of people, and not just by walking on the ground. I can look at a Google Earth image, and I can just scroll my finger across the screen for any property anywhere in the world and determine the best place for a bore. And when I give the GPS readings to the client, whether it's in France or Italy or Germany or whatever, the drilling contractor goes along there and they find the water precisely where I have predicted. It is just amazing, and I can understand, because I've come from the same education as everybody else, I can understand the difficulty everybody has believing that something like this can happen. But it's true. I've got nothing to gain financially by promoting something like this. All it's done has cost me money. But the young students in Nepal are absolutely amazing, because the moment they pick up this divining rod, it responds in their hand. And they are just so excited to discover something which they were never aware they had. We've got this amazing talent and we should be using it. And if we use it appropriately, we can address climate change. There is no doubt in my mind at all. We can speed up the growth of trees dramatically, because if a tree is planted there as opposed to there, the growth rate is dramatically different. In the main street of the town where I live, in Australia, there was 150 trees planted about 20 years ago. Just 2%, after 20 years, about this diameter, 40-45 centimetres in diameter. They're all in the right place according to the divining, and the remainder are all like this. Now, which trees have got more carbon sequestered in them? It's the bigger ones. And which trees are worth more money for timber? The bigger ones. You know, we can get 100% of the trees to grow really well if people will open their minds and adopt this amazing inherent talent with which we are all blessed from birth.
So, sir, would you, in brief, explain, with the help of this device,
yes,
how could we determine which one is the best place for growing trees, for their rapid growth, for good timber, like this?
Okay. A couple of German scientists in the 1940s discovered a grid pattern within the Earth's magnetic field, and it can be located just by using this divining rod. There's a side of it running in this direction and running across here. Unfortunately, there's not enough space for me to do it properly, but it's about 2 meters by 2 meters. And within each of those squares, there's 250,000 intersection points of individual energy lines, each of which I assume must have subtly different electromagnetic signals. And it appears that every tree is tuned into a specific site. So when you get millions of seeds being deposited by a tree, you don't want millions of seeds growing in competition with each other. They would very soon all die out. But the tree, the seed that falls in the appropriate place for that particular variety of tree, just grows dramatically faster. And the other trees just are suppressed. And so I can just ask the position, say, for an apple tree, and it'll say, there's an energy line running in this direction, intersecting with an energy line running in that direction, and that is the best place to plant it. And then about 2.2 meters over in that direction, there'll be another place. But if a tree is going to be a large tree, like an avocado, for argument's sake, you don't want to plant an avocado in each of the squares. You only want to plant them in, and I will ask the divine rod, every second one, it's saying no, every third one, every fourth one. So this tells you exactly the spacing. At the moment, people plant the trees too close together, so their root zones come together and they're competing for limited nutrients and moisture. They have to be planted at the correct spacing in order that this doesn't happen. And when they're in the right place and the right spacing, they grow so much better.
So, according to you, that this device would help you to find the best place for planting trees?
Yes.
Isn't it?
Correct.
And so, when the rod deflects to the right, then that would be the best place for the plant which you intend to plant?
It all depends on where you're walking. If, for argument's sake, I'm walking across here and I'm looking for the best place for that particular tree, I can't remember now what it was, but it was here, it'll turn to the right in that direction and then to the right there. But if I'm coming up here, it'll turn to the left to approach the same place from a different angle.
So when you start from any angle to the best place or the appropriate place,
yes,
it would turn to the right.
No, it'll turn to the appropriate direction, the shortest direction to the closest place for that particular tree.
In the particular point where it is the best place, it would deflect to the right, yes?
No, afraid not. No. Here it is going to the right at this point, saying follow that energy line. Here, if I'm a bit to the right, it'll go to the right. But if I'm a bit to the left, it'll go to the left. But it is basically saying that point. If I'm a little bit there, it'll go right. If I'm a little bit here, it'll go left.
So when the rod deflects to the left, then that would not be the right place at that point, yes?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
It is the correct point. Yes.
So
Let me just clarify that point. You find an energy line running in this direction, which is either northeast to southwest or northwest to southeast. And then when it meets the energy line running at right angles to that, that is the place where you plant the tree, regardless of whether it goes to the right at that point or the left at that point. Literally just 1 centimetre away will determine whether it goes to the right or the left. Are you with me? It's irrelevant the direction. It's just indicating an energy line which is running in that direction.
so that would be the best place for the.
That was an apple tree, I think I said.
So for different trees, that the place would be different. For example, in that point, could we plant mango tree?
No, that was the place for the apple. A mango tree is in a completely different place on an energy line running in this direction, intersecting with an energy line running in that direction, or in that direction. It's running that way, left and right at that point. So every tree is tuned into a subtly different point. And the closer it is to that point, the better it will grow. And as I said, in the main street of my local town, the difference is, after 20 years, eucalyptus, or 𝐂𝐚𝐿 maculata they are, more accurately, the ones that are in the right place are this size, while all the others are about this size. It is amazing the difference it makes.
So let me learn how this works. For example, I intend to plant
Yes.
lychee tree.
Yes.
Now I am trying to find out the best place for lychee.
Yes.
Let me try. For example, I asked this divine rod, is this the best place? Like this?
Yes.
And does it, the right deflection over here, does it tell me the best place, appropriate place here?
It will turn right if the right place is over to your right, but it will turn left if the appropriate place is over to the left.
So to any question which we ask to the divine rod,
Yes.
if it deflects to the right at the appropriate point, that would be the best place.
No, sorry.
For example, I am asking a question to this divine rod. Please tell me the best place for planting lychee.
Yes.
So I am running this one to this direction,
Yes.
and finally turn over this point. Let me suggest. And is this the best place for planting that tree?
No.
So how could I know which one is the best place?
For lychee, we have to just walk in any direction. It makes no odds what direction we go in. It will turn somewhere, okay?
Over this point.
Yeah.
It is
but that's irrelevant. It's over this point now. Okay? It is intersecting with a line which is running here. Okay? The line is there. The line is there. The line is there. It's a matter of how far along that line is appropriate for that particular plant. So for lychee, the appropriate place is there when the rod turns at a right angle, either to the right or to the left. It's irrelevant which way it turns.
Is it?
I think the average school child in Nepal, if I could give a series of, say, 3 or 4 lessons of 2 hours, they would be competent.
So, would you tell us how could we prepare this divine rod?
How do you prepare it? All it is a piece of wire which is bent at a right angle. It's as simple as that. It is best if it is insulated, which serves 2 purposes. If you drop it on the ground, you can see it. The insulation stands out, but also it does stop you from picking up energies that are magnified by this, because it's basically an aerial, and there are bad energies which are bad for human health.
So to prepare this rod, we just require a piece of wire.
That is correct.
And then we have to turn it to...
Just bend it in a right angle like that. Yes.
And then we have to insulate it.
That's correct.
So which material should we use? Just like this rubber you have used?
You can get different types of insulation. So this one is has been used a lot, so it's deteriorated in appearance.
So for what purpose have you placed different colors over here?
Mainly so if it's dropped on the ground or anywhere, you can see it more clearly, whether on the table there or on the ground.
just for same purpose you have used it. But if we wish, we can use insulating material with the same color.
Yes, yes, makes no odds.
But if we do not use any insulating material here, then
you will get the possibility of getting what the doctors call a frozen shoulder. And this happened to me until I started insulating them. And the result was I had to have cortisone injection.
So would you explain how we would be benefited by this rod?
Well, the benefit for the environment and for the farmer is the same. If instead of only getting 2% of our trees performing really well, we can get 100% of our trees performing really well. Obviously, that's good for the wallet, for the farmer, for the forester, for the fruit grower, whether olives or apples or oranges or whatever. The trees, everybody recognizes that the trees perform differently. And the amazing thing is, you don't need to use fertilizers. Once you use this method to grow the trees, they will just naturally grow better, as they have done for millions of years. Artificial fertilizers have only been around for about 80 or 90 years. We don't need them. We just need to emulate the amazing secrets that nature has that have never been revealed before. But while I've been traveling around Nepal, interacting with different farmers, they could see the logic of what I was saying, particularly when I was talking about their agricultural crops. They could understand that beans put nitrogen into the ground and they help maize to grow. They could understand that the smell of onions keeps the butterflies away from the cabbage plants. They could understand that ginger will keep the insects away that attack cucumbers. But when I showed this to them using the divining rod, it made it much more scientific, which scientists probably won't agree with that, but it gives a specific layout for these particular plants to be grown in relation to each other. It all makes such good sense. As I said, the farmers have realized this to a certain extent using their intuition. But their intuition just hasn't been refined sufficiently well. We still have doubts. When we think of something, we think, wow, is that great? But if I put a divining rod in 3 or 4 people's hands and they all get the same answers, that's got to be indicating that the answers are correct. If one person got one answer and somebody got another answer and somebody got another answer, there'd be disputes and people would say, well, this is crazy. But I've got videos of students, we go along and at exactly the same moment, all the divining rods turn. It is just amazing.
So sir, would you tell me, without fertilizer, by using this divining rod, how could we grow crops or trees?
Okay. Right, well, corn I've seen growing as monocultures. Everywhere I go around Nepal, there's maize or corn being grown everywhere. And it demands a lot of nitrogen. And so people go out and they buy NPK and they spread it on their corn. But it costs money. But the divining rod says there's a specific energy line which runs northeast to southwest, along which corn wants to grow. And it is an energy line running here. Okay, this line. And about 2 meters over there, there'll be another line. And 2 meters over this way. And then it'll say, I just ask, where do I plant beans in order to provide the corn with nitrogen to aid its growth? And it just says plant a row of beans here, alongside the corn.
To this line.
That's right. Then I just say, okay, I've seen fields of cabbages, again grown as cabbage. Every cabbage is competing for exactly the same nutrients. But if you plant it where the divining rod says, which is over here, adjacent, in a parallel row to the beans and the corn, it'll grow here very well. And it's not competing for the same elements as the corn or the beans. But it is further away, interestingly, from the corn than is the beans. And the reason for this is because the cabbage is attacked by the white cabbage butterfly. And what we need to do is to put a plant in between the corn and the cabbage, which will deter the cabbage butterfly from coming and laying its eggs on the cabbages. And if I just say onions, show me where onions should be planted. Onions need to be planted between the cabbage and the corn. And the smell of the onion keeps the cabbage butterfly away. So you don't have to buy insecticides. And we don't like insecticides on vegetables because any insecticide, if it's killing something, it can't be good for us when we eat it. It's bad for us to put any insecticides on plants. But the benefits are amazing. And fortunately, a lot of the farmers I've seen are going to implement this, and hopefully we'll see that in due course the benefits become better and better the longer term that this method is used.
So one thing I would like to ask you, how could we find out the best place for planting a tree which requires a high amount of magnesium?
Right. Well, if it needs a high amount of magnesium, all plants basically need magnesium because magnesium is essential for producing, plants to produce flowers and fruit in the case of fruit trees. But there's certain plants that actually put magnesium into the soil in the same way there's certain plants that put boron into the soil. And boron is a very interesting element. It was the first one that I investigated when I made one of my discoveries. At the very mention of a particular element, the divining rod will go to a specific and different compass bearing. So if I say gold, it'll go to an angle compass bearing like that. If I say nitrogen, it will go to a different compass bearing. And I have this all mapped out on what I call my circle of elements. And so I can look at an area of land and I can just go around this circle of elements and determine what elements are missing from the soil if a particular crop is to be grown. I've done this for a gentleman. He'd sent soil samples to 5 different analytical laboratories. He was growing chestnuts and he phoned me up and asked if I could do a soil analysis. And I did this over the phone without even meeting him. It is just amazing the connections we have through spirit, through God, whatever the explanation is. Because I told him the elements that were missing according to my divining, and he just said, this is just so amazing. He said the result was exactly the same as he got from the 5 chemical analytical laboratories. And this costs nothing. I can train anybody to do this instead of having to pay out valuable money. You know, farmers in Nepal are poor. They don't want to be spending money getting soil analysis done.
So, sir, just I would like you to demonstrate it with our viewers.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it over here, the best spot for high amount of magnesium?
I can't do that. No.
You can't?
That's no. So it doesn't work like that. Sorry, there's a misunderstanding there.
Oh.
But I'll give you an example.
So you require a large area.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
There is a plant that was introduced to Australia, either intentionally or unintentionally, and it's called African lovegrass. And it is a real problem growing in the agricultural area of Western Australia. And anyway, using the divining rod, I determined that this particular plant, which is just about impossible to kill, the role of this plant is to put magnesium into the soil. So I thought, if I spray magnesium on the soil here, I will basically put this weed out of a job. This was the concept I had in mind. So I made up a solution of Epsom salts, which is magnesium sulfate, and sprayed these weeds with it, and they died. Absolutely fantastic. So, but the good thing is, the magnesium sulfate has been applied to kill this particular obnoxious weed, but it's also beneficial for the crops that will be planted there after the weeds have died. It is just so amazing. We win in every possible way.
So, according to you,
yes,
how does this divine rod help to overcome the problem of global warming and climate change the world is facing today?
As I understand it, up till about 150 years ago, the only source of energy was burning wood. Coal was only used in a very small amount. Oil had not been discovered. Gas had not been discovered. And so we were not burning any of the carbon fuels. So for the last just over 100 years, we've been burning enormous amounts of carbon-rich products, coal, oil and gas, which were sequestered by trees millions of years ago to get rid of the cloud of carbon dioxide that enveloped the planet. And they ultimately produced these sources of energy for us. And we've been releasing these gases back into the atmosphere. The only way that we can reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the air efficiently is by planting trees. And if we can plant trees using the methods that I've developed, they will grow faster, sequester more carbon, but also I've developed ways to grow trees in lower rainfall regions where trees are normally just discounted out of hand for forestry. People say it's too dry to grow the trees there, but I'm growing them there. The methods are so simple. But unfortunately, when the early settlers came to Western Australia, they only had experience with growing trees in Britain. That was the extent. So they only knew about trees that grew in relatively high rainfall zones and with deciduous trees. What they didn't realise, and what scientists to this day will not accept or miss, is the fact that the Australian evergreen trees have evolved completely differently, and they need completely different planting methods. And when I started planting my trees with my methods, everybody said, it's crazy, they will die, there's no way they will live. But these same people who criticise will not come and look at the results. I don't know what their problem is.
So, in that matter, how did this divine rod help you? Please explain it with our viewers.
The divining rod has basically helped me to determine a multitude of different things. It can determine where there's significant soil changes, for argument's sake, across a paddock. Now, different trees are soil specific. Trees that might grow on this area of soil might not grow on that area of soil. And initially I planted a rotation of 5 or 6 trees with a view of finding out where the different trees perform best. And so in certain places a particular tree would grow well, but it wouldn't grow well there. And another tree that would grow well there wouldn't grow there. But with the divining rod, one can determine where the changes occur and simply ask which is the appropriate tree to plant here. And it will say either yes or no as to whether a particular tree is appropriate. It has taken me a long time to develop this, and it's cost me a lot of money. I haven't earned any money out of this research, but it is so fantastic when I demonstrate it to young students and they get exactly the same information as myself. Last year at 𝐂𝐝𝐿 in Kathmandu College of Forestry and 𝐂𝐝𝐿, can't remember what the acronym stands for. But we went out, there's a row of trees, and I put a divining rod in each of their hands, and I said, show me the best position for each of these trees. And they went along, and the trees varied in different sizes. And the closer the tree was to the ideal place, the bigger it was. And all these students just said, wow, this is fantastic. You know, the evidence is there if people will come and look. But people don't want to come and look because education is a form of brainwashing. Once we're told something, we think that is the way things have to be done. And if our fathers did it and our grandfathers did it, it must be right. But no, however well we do anything, there is always a better way.
So with the help of this divine rod, we have to take it and we have to move around and we have to ask question like this. Is this the suitable place for planting this timber tree? And if this divine rod deflects to the right and if it says yes, then there we have to plant that particular tree, yes?
I'm going into too much detail here. All you have to say is, I want to plant an apple tree here. Show me where to plant the apple tree. and the divining rod will point over there, point there, that's where you plant the tree. Simple as that. Where do I plant the tree? Follow that line. If I want to plant a guava tree, where do I plant it? There. Where do I plant a lemon tree? There. Simple as that. Bang, 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 bang.
So we have the different points for planting different trees.
Every tree is tuned into a different point.
For example, same tree in the next point where we have to plant.
Okay.
Along the lines from that point, or we have to find different points.
Approximately every 2 meters.
From that point.
Along a particular energy line, from that point, there is a place to plant the tree. But hang on a moment. If the tree is going to be a big tree, you don't want to plant a tree every 2 meters. If the tree is going to be 10 meters wide, you want to plant them 10 meters apart, at least. So that is basically every 5th square of 2 meters. Otherwise, they're going to be competing in due course, and the trees will suffer.
So, for example, this is the point, and from this point, which direction we have to choose? Any direction?
It'll tell you the direction. Plant them in that. Normally it's northwest to southeast, but it will tell you. It'll tell you the energy line along which to plant the trees. Trees want to be planted basically northwest to southeast. But we're going into too much detail. All we need to do
from the same point we have to follow.
Yeah.
So, in which parts of Nepal you share all these findings of your research?
Well, I've been to a lot of schools in and around Kathmandu itself, and also been to some organic farms, which is really interesting. They're very keen to use the methods in their crop rotation, also with growing rice, which is really exciting. I've also been to Chitwan. These names are all very difficult for me. I've just come back from Temal, been to Hatordra and Pokhara, and my friends probably know more of the names than I do, unfortunately. They're very difficult for a Western person to remember these names and say them. To the different streams.
Yes.
Okay, so this stream, I just count up, is it more than 5 meters below the ground? And it's saying yes. Is it more than 10 meters below the ground? Yes. More than 15? More than 20? No. So it's bit over 15, 16, 17. So it's 17 meters below the ground. This one, how far is that below the ground? More than 5 meters? More than 10? More than 15? More than 20? More than 25? More than 30? No. 25, 26, 27. So that one's at 27 meters below the ground.
So you would also find out how much water we could get in an hour from the well
right.
which we dig.
That's right. If we dug a hole at that where those 2 underground streams cross, I just ask how much water can we pump from that? More than 100 litres an hour? It's saying yes. More than 200, more than 300, more than 400, more than 500, more than 600, no. But more than 500, yes. More than 510, 520, 530, 540, 550. So about 540 litres per hour.
Per hour.
And I've done this for hundreds of people. And they phone me up and they say, David, this is incredible. We've found the water and it's exactly the quality you said it would be, at the depth you said it would be, and the quantity.
So according to you, we would get a lot of water. And is this water fit for drinking, please, also?
Yeah, I asked that already. It said, no, this water is not fit for drinking.
So what is the problem here? Pollution?
It'll be pollution.
Chemical pollution or other?
Yeah.
Mr. Paulson.
I'm not worried.
Sewage?
Pollution is pollution. There's probably a multitude of sources, and it's saying yes to that. When I say multitude of sources, as soon as I form a question in my mind, the divining rod gives an answer, and as soon as I thought multitude of sources, it just starts saying yes, 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 yes. So pollution from chemicals, from sewage, from other sources, saying yes to all those things.
So it is polluted from chemical sources, also from the sewage sources, like all these things.
Yeah. One of the problems in rural areas is everybody is using septic tanks for their sewage, for their toilets, and really and truly that is, we should really be using that as fertilizing our vegetables and things rather than wasting it.
So what was the feedback by the people to you regarding your work and findings in Nepal?
Oh, they just love it. They love it. Unfortunately, the students aren't at this stage planting vegetables themselves, but most of them come from farms, and I think that the parents are generally resistant to change. Once we have been doing something for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and getting reasonable results, we think we are good. You know, why should we change? But when a child goes home and says, "Dad, I have discovered something amazing at school today, let's try it." And when the father sees the child getting enthusiastic about this, and perhaps he brings another school friend home, and they do it together and say, "Look, this is the energy line we should plant our corn on. This is the energy line we should plant our cabbages on." The father's going to say, "Maybe there is something worth trying here. We have everything to gain and nothing to lose." It is just so important.
So, did those children to whom you demonstrate all these things in school and school probably, let me tell, did they excel to use this one?
Yes, they could do it instantly. As I say, they do need more lessons, and this is a problem. I can only stay here for 3 months.
So could you tell us that how many times should we use this device to be excel in using this one?
You can use it every day. At home in Australia, I use it every day. I have it in my house. If I have a question that I want to ask God an answer for, I use this. It's amazing.
Is there any scientific basis for the working of this instrument?
Science cannot explain it. Science never will explain it. But they have recognized, there's an American actor, Morgan Freeman. He produced a series of television programs called God. And I saw one of these programs, and it was interesting. They put different electrical devices on people's brains to see what parts of the brain were operating when people were meditating or thinking of God or doing these different things. And they found that different areas of the brain were working when they were thinking of God than if they were just doing learning another language, or if they were doing mathematics, or if they were doing physics, or if they were doing chemistry. All this was happening on this side. But when they started thinking about God and things like this, it was opening up in another area. And this is fantastic. The scientists themselves, who are not prepared to look at what I'm doing, tell us that we only use about 10% of our brain. They know our brain is capable of so many more things. And our brain is clearly just like a computer, or more accurately, computers are just like our brain. We are connected wirelessly to something that is an incredible source of knowledge. You know, I don't know what God is. We cannot explain God. Nobody can explain God.
So apart from using it in forestry and agriculture, in other sectors where we can use this one?
When I'm in my car, I use it instead of a GPS. Now, last time I came to Kathmandu, I had to go to the Australian Embassy, and I took a taxi, and I had my divine rod in my hand. So I thought I would walk back to the hotel. So I said, "Please guide me to the particular hotel," and it guided me through little alleyways, through back streets, which I would have never gone through, to the very hotel. Years ago, I went to Melbourne. I don't know Melbourne at all. And I stayed with a friend, and then I phoned up somebody else and said, "Where are we meeting today?" They gave me an address of a girl called Sarah, and I said, "Where should we meet?" And they said, "Sarah." And so I just said, "Guide me to Sarah." And it took us through all the streets to Sarah.
So according to you, that we can use for any purposes?
The more you use it and the more confident you become, the better you become at it. But even though I've been doing it for all these years, I've come from the same education system as everybody else has done. I've had years and years of brainwashing that this is not scientific, it can't be right. And so I have self-doubt. And as soon as I have self-doubt, it doesn't work. But as long as I remain confident, it works.
So at last, what would you like to suggest to the people around the world throughout television?
What I would really like to see is people around the world like to investigate divining. I'm happy to go anywhere in the world and demonstrate this to people. And possibly the role of the students that I'm teaching in Nepal is going to be for them to go around, like disciples, if you like, around the world to spread this information, because it is so important. If we don't address climate change soon, mankind is going to die out. The scientists acknowledge this. Okay, some won't because they're climate change deniers. But the scientists recognise that we cannot live when the carbon dioxide levels get too high. We will die. It's as simple as that. And where are we going to grow the food? For growing populations if we do survive? And by using the divining rod, I've demonstrated on my own land, which was so degraded. Everybody said, you will never grow trees there, David. They will all die. And now there's a forest. I've got 242 hectare forest of all these beautiful trees. It works.
So by growing tree efficiently and rapidly by using this device, we can address the problem of climate change, according to
That's correct. And in Australia and India and America, there's lots of areas that are suffering from salinity. And this was my initial goal, was to address salinity where my property is. And the word aurea is actually the word Australia, from which the word SALT has been removed. So I say aurea is Australia of the future when salt has been removed. And people who drive down the road, they've been going down this road for years and years and years, just seeing the land get worse and worse and worse. But they don't even come in and ask for advice.
So how did you overcome with the problem of this salt there?
Purely by planting the trees. The trees lower the water table. Basically, Australia is a very flat country, just with rolling slopes like this. And originally, the whole landscape was covered with forests. And when it rained, the rain would fall on the forests, and because it's basically a low rainfall area, the root zones of the trees would hang on to the moisture, and very little would escape to what is called the water table. But as soon as all these trees were cleared for agriculture, the rain would just penetrate the soil and go straight down to the water table, and the water table rose because the flat landscape means that the water doesn't drain to the ocean. And so as the water got closer and closer to the surface, the heat and the low humidity caused the water moisture to be drawn out of the soil and evaporate away, leaving salt on the ground. And it's about a football pitch an hour is being lost to salinity in Australia, according to scientists. It is an enormous problem. It's spreading and spreading. But with my small property in a large catchment of 46,000 hectares, I'm addressing the problem. I've solved the problem, my own property, and downstream, the property there is benefiting, and the property upstream is benefiting.
So according to you, by lowering the water table on the ground, we can overcome the problem of salinity.
Salinity, that's right, because once the
or acidity, for example, soil may be acidic one, and that may not be useful for all kinds of crops. We require mostly neutral soil, no? So how can we overcome acidity problem of the soil using this divine rod?
Well, again, you can just ask what the pH of the soil is, and you can ask for the rate that you need to spread gypsum on it or lime. It'll answer any of these questions.
So without spreading gypsum, couldn't we overcome soil acidity?
Quite possibly, but I don't know that myself. But Divine Rod is saying yes, for sure, we can. And ultimately, the rain will just wash the acid out of the soil into the water table, and ultimately it will drain away.
So by that way, also it can help without gypsum.
Sure.
So at last, I would like to thank you for being with us here in our studio, for sharing your valuable findings of your research with us and with the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I hope that the viewers have enjoyed what I've shared with them and will be open-minded and pick up a piece of wire, make a divining rod, and ask questions, because we could all have this amazing inherent talent. We just have to develop it.
So at last, I would like to bid a goodbye with you all valuable viewers. Thank you very much for viewing by affording a valuable time with us. Thank you very much.